Welcome to our course about 15-passenger van safety. After 6 years as a full-time parent, Brenda was excited to re-enter the workforce. Because she had an excellent driving record and knew the roads, she was confident she would do a good job driving a 15-passenger van for her regional airport's passenger shuttle service. During the first months, Brenda really enjoyed herself. She had no idea such a variety of interesting people came through her small town. One day, her dispatcher contacted her to tell her that because of a time-spot mix-up, a group that had been scheduled to be picked up in an hour and a half would actually be ready for pickup in half an hour. Brenda had already loaded her 12 passengers who needed to return to the airport, but at the cautious speeds she normally drove, it would take her about 40 minutes to get there. Brenda hated to keep customers waiting. It felt terribly unprofessional. She decided that because her usual speed was so cautious, she could afford to speed up a bit. After all, she would just be driving at the same speed as everyone else. On the way to the airport, there was a scenic 2-lane road that wound through a forest. Brenda usually enjoyed taking it slow on this beautiful road, but since she was worried about picking up her passengers on time, she was impatient with the slow driver in front of her. She followed the car more closely than she usually would, hoping the driver would take the hint and speed up a little. Suddenly, a deer appeared in front of the car she was following. Brenda slammed on her brakes as she watched the car ahead slam on their brakes but hit the deer anyway. The next thing she knew, the van rolled over, ultimately landing on its side in the ditch beside the road. No one appeared to be badly injured, but as the paramedics attended to everyone, Brenda was still shaking with terror and guilt at getting her passengers into an accident. One of the paramedics noticed the expression on her face and said to her, "Hey, everyone here is going to be all right, thanks to the fact that you made them all buckle up." Shakily, almost in tears, Brenda said, "I've never rolled a car before." "The thing is," said the paramedic, "you weren't driving a car. You were driving a van. Most people don't realize that 15-passenger vans are more likely to roll over than any other type of vehicle." "What?" said Brenda, shocked. "I didn't know that." Cars, vans, and large vehicles work the same way, so they should probably be driven the same way, right? Wrong. As Brenda found out, if you drive a 15-passenger van the same way you would drive a car, you are putting yourself, your passengers, and everyone else on the road at risk for dangerous accidents. You're taking this training so you can learn about the differences between driving a 15-passenger van and a car so you can operate a van safely. By the end of this course, you will be able to recognize the difference between driving a 15-passenger van and a car. Recall the best way to load a 15-passenger van. Describe how to adjust your driving to account for the differences between cars and 15-passenger vans. And recall potentially hazardous conditions when driving a van and how to adjust your driving to account for them. Fifteen-passenger vans are longer, wider, and heavier than cars. As a result, they handle differently. When occupied, the vehicle's center of gravity is high and toward the rear. That increased instability means it's more likely to roll over or fishtail than a car, especially during emergency maneuvering or high-speed driving. Vans make wider turns than cars. If you don't account for that, you can strike people or stationary objects, causing injuries or damage. 15-passenger vans require more space to change lanes safely. They also have bigger blind spots than cars. These blind spots are all around the vehicle, with the biggest blind zones on the sides and behind. When you are driving a 15-passenger van, it takes more time for you to come to a complete stop than when you are driving a car. If you apply your brakes the same way you would in a car, you could rear-end someone or cause an accident. Vans also take longer to slow down and speed up. Let's make sure you know the difference between driving a 15-passenger van and a car. Drag each statement to the right category, true or false. Before you drive a 15-passenger van, you need to inspect it to make sure it is safe. Pay particular attention to lights, including headlights, turn signals, and brake lights. Make sure the wipers are in good working condition. Test the horn to make sure it works. Check the mirrors to make sure they are in place, unbroken, and pointed to minimize your blind spots. Checking your tires is particularly important with 15-passenger vans. Because they carry heavy loads, van tires are more susceptible to wear and tear. Make sure tires are not bald, overinflated, or underinflated. Loading passengers and cargo correctly reduces the likelihood of rollovers and increases the chances of rollover survival. So, how do you load a 15-passenger van correctly? Load people and cargo in front of the rear axle if possible. Placing cargo and passengers toward the front of the vehicle pushes the van's center of gravity forward, which improves emergency handling and reduces rollover risk. Distribute passengers evenly on each side of the van. In other words, don't seat all the passengers on one side. Place and secure cargo and any loose items so they will not block visibility, interfere with operating the van, or cause injuries in a crash. You and your passengers should wear your seat belts at all times. Make sure you and your passengers know your van evacuation policy and how to exit the vehicle in the event of an emergency. There are also some things you should not do when loading a van. Do not load anything on top of the van or tow a trailer. Never load more than 15 people in a 15-passenger van. That means the limit is you as the driver plus 14 passengers. When transporting children, make sure they are restrained using the proper safety seats and methods required by law for children of their age and size. Let's make sure you can recall the best way to load a 15-passenger van. Click the van that is loaded the most safely. When you are behind the wheel of a 15-passenger van, there are some best practices you can follow to drive safely. First, remember to move slowly, steadily, and predictably. Doing so will help other drivers stay out of your blind spots and give you room to maneuver. Signal earlier than you would if you were driving a car. The advance notice will give drivers around you time to anticipate your movements. Know the height of the van so that you can avoid low-hanging branches and ensure you have adequate clearance for bridges and overpasses. Make an effort to drive in the center of your lane so you can avoid encroaching on other lanes or driving on the shoulder. Be aware of the length of the van, especially before you move into a lane. Make sure you have plenty of room before you attempt to change lanes or merge. You need to make wide turns at corners and roadway curves to accommodate the van's width and length. You may find it helpful to turn slightly in the opposite direction before you start your big turn. Just be cautious of other vehicles. As always, move slowly, steadily, and predictably, especially at turns. Moving slowly will give you time to make sure you have clearance on both sides and will help you maintain control of the van. Let's see what you've learned so far about adjusting your driving to account for the differences between cars and 15-passenger vans. Read the question and then select the best answer. You are at a four-way stop. When you turn right, you should get close to the curb, move as far to the right as possible, pull out slightly left, then turn right, or accelerate swiftly to get out of the intersection. Vans are heavier than cars. That means they have more inertia and momentum. The brakes have to work harder to bring you to a stop. To account for the extra work your brakes have to do, you need to increase the distance between you and other vehicles. Begin braking much earlier. When braking, use light, gradual pressure on the brakes. Give yourself plenty of space when slowing or stopping. Don't assume you can stop in the same amount of time and distance as you can when you're driving a car. In a van, you will have a more difficult time maintaining acceleration on ascending grades and slowing down on descending grades than you would in a car. To maintain control of your vehicle, use your brakes periodically when driving on descending grades. Avoid backing up whenever possible. Backing safely is difficult in vans because of their size and big blind spots. If you're able, park in a place where you can pull forward so you don't have to back into or out of a parking space. When driving an unfamiliar van, practice backing once or twice in a safe location, such as an empty parking lot. If you have to back up, follow these best practices. Use a spotter to help you if someone is available. Take your time and move slowly. Stay about half the length of your vehicle away from any barriers that you have to navigate between. If possible, back to the driver's side, the left. This will give you better visibility as you back up. When you change lanes in a van, there are some things you need to keep in mind. As we mentioned earlier, you need to move slowly and predictably. Remember to signal well in advance of any lane changes. Be aware of your blind spots. Be aware of small cars and motorcycles, and check multiple times before changing lanes or merging. In a van, it takes you longer to accelerate and decelerate than in a small vehicle. Pull into faster lanes of traffic with caution. Finally, be aware of the length of the van and make sure you have enough room before you move into a lane. Let's take another moment to see what you've learned about adjusting your driving to account for the differences between cars and 15-passenger vans. Read the question and then select the best answer. You are about to drive down an exit ramp with a descending grade. What should you do to help maintain control of the van? Accelerate into the lowest part of the ramp. Avoid touching the brake or the gas pedals. Firmly press the brakes for the duration of the ramp, or lightly tap the brakes periodically on the ramp. In certain hazardous conditions, you need to slow down even more than usual. Slow down in bad weather such as rain, snow, or fog, and any time the road may be wet or icy. Because vans are boxy and have a high center of gravity, they are challenging to handle in windy weather. Slow down in these conditions. Be prepared for heavier wind and gusts near open fields, overpasses, bridges, and tunnels. Large trucks and buses can also cause strong winds as they drive by. 15-passenger vans are more prone to roll over on curved roads. Slow down when driving on curves. As always, move slowly, steadily, and predictably. Vans are likely to overturn if they hit ditches or embankments, hit objects, or run into soft soil. Slow down on rural roads, particularly those that are unpaved. If you make a mistake or your wheels do drop off the road, reduce your speed gradually and steer back onto the road when it is safe to do so. Avoid hard braking or panicky steering. Before we conclude the course, let's make sure you can recall potentially hazardous conditions when driving a van and how to adjust your driving to account for them. Read the question and then select the best answer. What should you do when you are driving a van in foggy conditions? Drive slightly to the left of your lane? Load passengers behind the rear axle? Slow down more than usual? Or turn on your high beam lights? You should now be able to recognize the difference between driving a 15-passenger van and a car. Recall the best way to load a 15-passenger van. Describe how to adjust your driving to account for the differences between cars and 15-passenger vans. And recall potentially hazardous conditions when driving a van and how to adjust your driving to account for them. Thank you for everything you do to keep the roads safe. This concludes the training.